and then I could rehang it later. So it's gonna preserve all of these little loops here so that you can put them back on the needles. So one reason is I need to take it off. For some reason, there's necklines that you do, like taking half of it off, like a V-neck. If you're doing a V-neck, you'd like wanna take half of it off, work on the one side, then take that off because you'd be done, and then rehang this one and only be working on one side at a time. That would be a reason. Another thing that you could do is ruffles. So like if I put a ripcord in here, then I could rehang it, but putting 3 or 4 stitches on each needle and cinch it down smaller, and then when I continue knitting, it's, they're seamless. It looks the same on both sides, even though, well, obviously it's purl on one side, but there's no seam. But what we're gonna use it for is a finished edge. So the reason you would do this is around a neckline, for instance, could be a reason. I just wanna end this as a finished edge, a bind off, but I want it to be stretchy. So in order to do it, I'm going to, you could use a tapestry needle too, but you've got this one, so just use this one. I'm gonna actually sew it, like sort of like a back stitch. It's gonna create this exact same edge on both sides, and you'll see. I'll do it off the machine. You can do it on the machine, I guess, but it's, just do it off the machine.
What is this bind off called?
So this one's called sew off, because I'm actually like sewing it, like I'm sewing it. You'll see. So it's called
You're
sew
sewing.
off. So make sure on this one that you have at least 4 times the amount here. That's really important. So yeah, I always have like way too much. But make sure you have at least 4 times the amount so that I can sew it. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm finished with this. This is gonna be my finished edge. So step number one is to put my ripcord in. So what I'd want to do is hang a clothespin on my ripcord. The ripcord is going to act like any other piece of yarn, but it's not going to go through here. So I want to unravel enough that I know that's not going to like get in the way. Put it into my carriage. So if something happens and you were to like break a yarn, or like let's say this was stripes, I wanted to change colors, you can always break a yarn, have a tail on the end, and then start another one on the same side. I mean, you could start on the other side, I don't know why you would, but you just usually want to start on the same side. So, you know, if something happens, your yarn breaks or something, you can always just have a tail and start another one. This'll, bless you. This'll go into a seam, most likely. So you would never, it's, you know, let's say we're doing stripes, you'd have like tails all over the thing. So it's never a problem to have like this broken and then start another one.
You just literally keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
As long as you've got loops on your needles, you can keep going. So it doesn't matter that this isn't connected anymore. If I have another one, like this will be another one in here, it'll knit exactly the same. So that's just like a good thing to know. So I'm gonna put this one in, and I'm gonna use like my hand basically as the tension rod. So I'm just gonna let it like slide through here and not get caught in anything. And I'm just gonna let it slide, don't hold on to it, just let it all slide through, and it's gonna knit another row, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if that was stripes, then it would be a different color. You can do the same way with switching yarns for stripes or something like that. It's a little bit caught in here. There it goes. Okay, so now I've got my ripcord, and I can just kinda wind this back up and let this hang as if it were like a clothespin. So now I've got my ripcord on both sides, but I can't just take this off like this or I will lose all of those loops. I want the bright color so that I can see the difference. I also want to switch colors so that I can really see the difference. I'm going to be sewing my stitches. So these are my stitches underneath here. These are my stitches, right? This is a stitch. This, later on you'll need to know, but not for this one. This is the heel of a stitch. So the one that goes like up is the stitch. The one that goes down is the heel. So if you sew it off through in between the stitches, the whole thing will fall apart. You can do it exactly right, but if you don't put it in the right place, then it won't work at all. So you need to make sure you're right here in the stitches. So you see I've got my very first one on the side. Sometimes it's hard to see because that's my first one. This is my second one. This this is my third one. It's right under the needle, but you need to know what it looks like so when you take it off the needles, it's easier to see. All right, so that's good to know. And then now I'm gonna do my waist yarn. So I'm just gonna net. And I'm throwing this yarn away, so I'm not even gonna bind it off. I'm just gonna, you could sew it off. I might just leave it here. You could leave it here and sew it off and then take it off. I could also just dump this because as long as you knit enough, it's not, with this yarn, it's not gonna unravel. Some yarn it will just like whoosh, go all the way down, but not with this one. So you might just leave it on the machine so that you can kind of see it a little bit easier. But I'm gonna take this yarn, right? This was my end piece, and I'm gonna do my sew off with that. So I'm gonna thread it just like it was a sewing needle. And I think it's easiest to think of it like a back stitch because I'm gonna go over 2, back 1, over 2, back 1, over 2, back 1. So I'm not gonna start in number 1, I'm gonna start in number 2, right here. This is my second stitch. Go through it, and then I'm gonna come back to stitch number 1 and go through that one. So when I come up, if you like lose your place, when I'm coming up, now I'm gonna go through 3 and back through 2. So when I'm coming up, there should be no yarn in here. See how there's like this one little piece of yarn coming out of that one? So when I come up through a new stitch, and you can see it's like, it's in between these ones, right? In between those, I come up through a brand new one with no yarn through it, and then I go back through one that already has one piece of yarn. And I can do it from the same side like this too. Go over 2, messes up how it looks because I'm switching methods, but, and then back 1, and then over 2. That's like a quicker way to do it if you want to do it from the front only. If that's confusing, just do it, pull it through each one. So I'm gonna go back 1, over 2. So I've got a stitch in between. And I'm gonna go back 1, over 2. So just like a back stitch. Back 1, over 2. So this is actually gonna create this exact same edge as the E-wrap or the double E-wrap. And if you're consistent about, you'll have to understand this when you're doing it, but you can either be going over or under the yarn that you've already done. Like I'm like pushing it down with my finger, so I'm going on top of it. This doesn't make any sense until you're actually doing it. But you'll get the same finished edge because sometimes like it'll look like lines like this, and sometimes it'll like go over and under if you're not being consistent about the method of how you're doing it. This isn't gonna make any sense until you do it. But you'll understand when you see it and it doesn't look perfect, then I'll tell you what happened. How about that? It's just about consistency. So you want to make sure you're doing the exact same thing over and over and over and over.
Okay, so over in China, when they're making us sweaters, is this what they're doing for real?
No.
Okay. I just needed to know if it took this long.
Sometimes it depends, but a lot of times like there's so many industrial like automated machines, so like mostly what you have are like things that are coming from like specialty machines. And then when you get to the very end, I came through that one and I just come back through that one again. So it comes, everything, it comes from the last one. So now I've sewn off, see on this side, like all the lines are going the same way. That's what I was talking about. I was like holding it like this down, like pushing it down this way, so that when I put it through it, I knew my needle was gonna go on top of the old stitch so that it would do it the same every single time. Because if you just kind of like stick it in there, and I don't care in the beginning, you guys are learning, but you'll understand when you start doing it, like if you just kind of stick it in there, it could go, see how it's like this is above, that's below, it could go above or it could go below. And if it goes the other direction, you'll get like a bar that goes across,
Mhm.
bar on the top, bar on the bottom, or something like that, right? But this is the edge you really want, which means you have to be consistent about how you do it. But you'll understand that when don't worry about it if it looks like not perfect like that, you'll figure it out. And then obviously you're done with this, and what you'll do is take it from the bobbin end. You always want to pull it from like the longer end and hold on to it. And then you can just pull that straight out and your waist yarn goes off, and that would go into the trash, and then you've got your two edges, which should be identical. So,
Cool.
yep.